Hello, children. We are getting into the Articles of Confederation. This is the in-between. So we just got done talking about the Revolutionary War, and what we're going to be talking about is the Constitution. And right smack dab in the middle is the Articles of Confederation. If you look at these two paragraphs here, I'm going to read these to you. This is kind of that transition piece from the Revolutionary War into the Articles of Confederation. So these are the notes that you guys should have as you're completing this as I'm teaching. So you can have my notes open as well. I'm going to go back and forth with those to make things easier for you. So it says, now that the United States is a new country, it must set up its own system of government. First, they set up the Articles of Confederation. After they noticed this would not work, they created the Constitution, which is still the nation's guiding document for a working government. The Revolution had a large role in what type of government would be created first. The people remained reluctant to unite under a strong central government, so many favored a republic. However, a democracy means power could be in the hands of the uneducated masses. So the first thing you need to do is you need to look up what republic is. All right, and you need to be able to define a republic, and basically it's a form of government in which the power is in the hands of the people and their elected officials. And that's what we have here in the United States. The power is in our hands, the people who get to vote for things, or it's in the hands of our elected officials, which more recently people have been kind of up in arms about. So when we look at the Articles of Confederation and why it was not successful, you have to think about where we came from. So during the Revolutionary War, we were in a relationship with Great Britain, who was very controlling, didn't let us have a say on anything, didn't let us have representation. So what we're going to do is we're going to go the exact opposite, and we're going to make sure that there's not a strong central government. Obviously, just getting out of that relationship, we go to the exact other end of the spectrum when it comes to the type of government that we want. So if you could, right here, I need you to type problems under the Articles of Confederation. So type in problems under so that you know these were all the issues. Over here is I'm going to tell you what to type in right here. So levying taxes. Levying means collecting. So right here, you need to type, if you don't know what levying means, type in collecting. What you should be adding in here is the federal government could not collect taxes from the citizens. Only the states could. All right? So that was the first issue. The government was in debt and it needed money, and it couldn't get money because it wasn't allowed to collect taxes. And then we look at representation of states. Each state, and this is what you're going to type in right here, each state was represented equally. Again, that's each state was represented equally. The problem with this was we began to see arguments between our big states and small states. And we're not talking about size, we're talking about population. The bigger states, the ones with larger population, felt that they should have more of a say. They should have more representation because they have more people. The amendment process. An amendment is a change or addition to. So if you're going to change the Articles of Confederation or you're going to add something to it, all 13 states had to agree. Now this is a problem because if you have something that you want to change, it's very unlikely that all 13 states are going to agree on the same thing. So changing or adding anything to it became extremely unlikely and difficult. The executive branch is the president, and there wasn't one under the Articles of Confederation. So that's what you need to type in there. There was no executive branch. President's the head of that. Executive branch enforces the laws. Next is the federal court system. Again, that's the Supreme Court, or SCOTUS, and there wasn't a federal court system, which caused some problems between different states and laws, and there wasn't, one set of laws that the whole United States would follow. So it was not necessarily the United States as more of a collection of states just loosely fit together under one thing. And then sovereignty. Sovereignty defined basically means who has the power. And in this case right here, you need to put the states had the most power. All right. So looking at these problems, and just like in any relationship, if there are some issues, for that relationship to get better, you got to fix these problems. So when we look at advancing the Articles of Confederation and getting rid of them, these here are the main issues that we're going to have to solve when we get into the Constitution. So if we look at your notes here, these are the main things that we're covering. Okay, we just went over this. What were the problems with the Articles of Confederation? That was the first thing that we looked at. Next here, what event compelled people to reconsider the Articles of Confederation? We're going to get to that in just a moment. And then the next video, this one will end talking about this, but then the next video is going to focus on the majority of information about Federalists and Anti-Federalists. We talked a little bit about leading to the Articles of Confederation. Remember, we just got out of the Revolution. We wanted to prevent a tyrannical government, one that had all the power, so they decide on a republic where the power is in the hands of the people. When you look at voting, you could see that the voting was not very equitable. There was only a small amount of people that got to vote, and it was mainly wealthy white landowners who got to vote. So if you were a female, you probably weren't voting, and if you were an African American, you were not allowed to vote either. Now, the main issue was debt and inflation from the Revolutionary War. So what the United States did during the Revolutionary War is they borrowed a lot of money from other countries, 2 or 3 in particular, but we were greatly in debt to those countries, and we were also in debt to our soldiers who fought the war. So what the United States did is the United States started printing its own money, and that's one of the powers that under the Articles of Confederation that the federal government had, is it could print its own money. So the federal government begins printing and printing and printing and printing and printing its own money. Well, the states also printed their own money. So now what you have is you have all of this money being printed. As a result, the money loses value. Prices on goods go way up because people have more money. The result is a system that we call inflation. That is when the value of money drops and the price of goods go up. That inflation caused a lot of problems for people when it comes to paying off debts. And we'll look at that and the importance of that in a little bit when we talk about Shays' Rebellion. Now, not everything under the Articles was bad. What we have are basically the 2 good things that happened. So the United States needs money, and it can't ask for money from the people because it can't collect taxes. So what it has to do is it has to sell stuff. If you recall, the United States won in the Treaty of Paris of 1783. The United States won all lands east of the Mississippi. Now, this here is the Ohio River, and right through here on this map are the Appalachian Mountains. If you guys recall from the beginning of the Revolutionary War topic, we talked about the Proclamation of 1763 that followed the French and Indian War, where King George said, hey, don't cross this line. I don't want you getting into problems with the Native Americans. So most of our people lived, you could just say, east of the Ohio River. That's where most of our people lived, east of the Ohio River. Well, now the United States has gained a lot more territory, and the United States can sell that land. So on your notes here, you have the article had 2 successes. Land Ordinance of 1785. The main thing I need you to know from Land Ordinance of 1785 is that it established the Northwest Territory. So it was a law that established the Northwest Territory, and its land would be sold at public auction. So know that about the Land Ordinance of 1785. The Northwest Ordinance of 1787, very similar to the Land Ordinance, however, it formed the political system and it gave a way for the new territories to become states. All right, and then that is mentioned right here in how those areas would end up becoming states. This here is the Northwest Territory. You have 5.5 states. You got Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, the state up north, Wisconsin, and part of Minnesota here. Obviously, this is, again, all lands east of the Mississippi. If you look here, this is when the states actually gained statehood. And again, this was important because they're selling the land in all of these territories, soon to be states, to pay off debts, to pay the veterans from the Revolutionary War. And our great state of Ohio became a state in 1803. Obviously, it was the first one because everybody's here. This is where they moved first. Then they moved to Indiana, then to Illinois, then they head north. Obviously, they would prefer these three states because the growing season is going to last a little bit longer. It's not as cold. The way they divided those states and those areas and regions in the Northwest Territory was the use of townships. So basically, township is 6 by 6 square mile, or 6 by 6 miles. So it's 36 square miles. So essentially, you have 36 squares in here. 4 of those squares went to veterans, and 1 went to the school. 1 they made a school for. And in each square, there's about 640 acres, which is a lot of land. And they sold 31 out of the 36 to individuals. And that is how, under the Articles of Confederation, the government made money, by the selling of land. So please understand the successes, which was those two, the Northwest Ordinance and the Northwest Territory. So know those. And then you got the weaknesses again. We already discussed those weaknesses, so please make sure that you know those weaknesses. Now, the last thing that I wanted you to know, if we go back up here, the last main thing for this video is what event compelled people to reconsider the Articles of Confederation. And that was Shays' Rebellion. Alright, so when you got this right here, you have what happened. I have this in your notes down here, and I have a lot of writing and stuff. Feel free, read through this, but essentially what was going on was the states began taxing farmers. Farmers didn't have enough money to pay their taxes, so the states began taking their farms away from them. So the farmers, not wanting to lose their farms, go to the courts and start protesting the courts so that they can keep their farms. In essence, the process would basically be something like you go to the court and judge rules that you're not paying your taxes, so you have to give up your farm. Well, if you don't allow the judge to get into the court, then you can't lose your farm. So these people who are American citizens who are having their farms taken away basically staged rebellions at many different courts. The problem was they're farmers, and they basically just have pitchforks and clubs, and they need some weapons. So one thing they try to do is they try to obtain weapons by attacking a federal arsenal in Pennsylvania. They're met by a militia group there and defeated. Now, the aftermath of this is important. So if we think to a couple weeks ago with the riot or insurrection or whatever it is that you want to call it at the Capitol building, and you want to equate that to Shays' Rebellion. Well, what we had at Shays' Rebellion is we had people go and actually analyze and think about, well, why did this happen? What was the problem with it? And when people began to discuss and look and see, they saw that there was a problem in the government, and it was the Articles of Confederation. So the next event that we get is the Constitutional Convention. My hopes is, in today's world, after what happened at the Capitol building, the insurrection, the riot, is that our leaders look and say, hey, what was the problem? What caused this? And then they, too, try and fix what's wrong and what's been going on in America and the hatred between the two parties. And they say, hey, we need something different. We need to have something different, just like our founding fathers did with Shays' Rebellion when they said, the articles aren't working. We need something different. So, working into transition into the Constitution, in 1787, Congress of the Confederation invited each state to send a delegate to a convention in Philadelphia in order to revise and improve the Articles of Confederation. That convention is going to be known as the Constitutional Convention. Debates began over the issues of taxes, the amount of power the federal government should have, individual liberties, and slavery. There were some different views that emerged, but just like always, we have about two sides that emerge. By the end of the Constitutional Convention, the delegates had put aside the Articles of Confederation in favor of a new Constitution. The new Constitution was sent to the states to be ratified or approved. Then we get a whole nother argument. Not everyone in the U.S. wanted the new Constitution, and then we have two sides that are going to emerge. The two sides were the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. The Anti-Federalists were opposed to adoption of the new Constitution, and the Federalists supported it. So, what we're going to get into next is what the Constitution looked like, and who were the Federalists, who were the Anti-Federalists, and what were their main argument points. Hope this helped. Have a good one, fellas and ladies.